Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety Committee meeting. Today we have one item, which is a briefing on the Office of Animal Services. And as we begin, let me see, it says, as we begin, I didn't know whether the Council President Albornoz or Council Member Hucker had any opening statements.
Good, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning. And we're going to ask Susan Farag, and we once again thank her for her fine work in putting this packet together. But this is a briefing, and there's no action going to actually take place today, other than getting updated. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan to please lead us through the packet.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to briefly summarize some of the highlights of the packet and then turn it over to Mr. Koenig and his partners to provide the updates to you. But this is following up from an October 18th Public Safety Committee work session where there were still some outstanding questions regarding the office's volunteer program and its outreach efforts. So today the office is going to answer the 4 questions listed on page 1. Basically stating how does OAS compare to other jurisdictions with regard to the number of volunteers it uses, how do other jurisdictions track volunteer hours, and how do they differentiate between active and non-active volunteers, an update regarding the shift to online and webinar trainings for volunteers, has that type of change increased volunteer participation and onboarding, and also the creation of a comprehensive multicultural outreach plan that engages diverse populations in the county. OAS conducted a survey of, I believe, 12 state and regional animal shelters to get answers to these questions. It is a little difficult to compare because they don't always operate in the same mode. Some are municipal run shelters that are government funded and some engage with nonprofits. So it's my understanding that these survey findings are their pre-COVID numbers because everybody's been disrupted by how COVID has had an impact on operations across the board. Your survey findings can be found on circles 1 through 7. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Koenig.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks for all your help in getting this together. So a lot of the information that we provided for the survey was really focused on the first 2 questions, but I also asked a couple other questions because how we count volunteers can range very differently, including how they count the foster providers. So foster care providers in most jurisdictions are not counted in their volunteer numbers. There's others that are small, especially the smaller ones. The same person that does the volunteer count does the foster count. So they pull them all in together as like one list of volunteers. But I think, as Susan mentioned, most notable is the fact that the localities are so different and these jurisdictions are so different with their the way they operate, especially if you're a nonprofit and you're bringing volunteers. You're essentially a volunteer organization that has some staff hires, and then they tend to have a higher number of active volunteers that are actually working. So they most differentiate between active and inactive. What I found in the survey, it was that how they count those is so vastly different, and there's no national standards for animal welfare organizations when it comes to counting volunteers. So this is why you see such a difference between them. But like some of them, like a couple of them are similar to OAS in that if they perform hours during a specific period of time per month, per quarter, then those are hours counted towards active volunteering. If it's they range from like 1 hour to 16 hours, where they say they have to do at least 1 hour or they have to do at least 16 hours over a 1 month or a 1 quarter period, however they count those to be credited as an active volunteer. So it's pretty diverse. And then with those that count the fosters, say like Dauber County, they have a formula that they use on how they gauge based on the number of animals being fostered, the age of the animals. Neonates take a lot more care, require a lot more care than say an adult cat or an adult dog. So, but they have a formula that they use, which is generally recognized nationally, at least not as a requirement, so everybody's counting the same, but really as a recommendation on how, what's the best practice out there. So, If you have any questions about those are the two first two big questions regarding and where the survey kind of helped us come to this conclusion is some of us have been in this a while, know that there are so many differences in how animal shelters operate and how they count numbers, how they provide numbers. And we try to do it all right. We try to do it the right way, but mostly it's the questions we get asked and what that jurisdiction really expects of us. So,
Tom, in question one on the packet, it says that there are 30 applications that are pending. How long does it take for an application to be approved or not approved?
yeah, thanks for asking it. We also talked about this in the third question and that answer, and that is it can be as quick as 2 weeks after they get they complete the orientation, the online. So if they got 30 pending, and usually take, right, Maria, it's about 2 weeks.
It really varies a lot on how quickly the applicant responds. So we've had people who have managed to get in here within 1 week. So it's very dependent on, we have a contact time turnaround of within 1 business day to respond to applicants. And if those applicants respond immediately with all of the required paperwork and their backgrounds only take a day or two, it sort of also depends on how quickly those backgrounds are. But once we've gotten the backgrounds through, it's very much dependent on the applicant's schedule then to get in here. So we've had people who have literally started within 1 week of applying. And then we've got people who take a bit longer. And then some people who apply ahead of time when they realize they're not actually planning on coming in until the next month, but they thought it was going to take longer. So they went ahead and applied now. So it really does vary person to person, but it is based on that applicant, not on our response. Our response is within 1 business day.
Good. Okay. Any other questions that was questions 1 and 2, I believe. Okay.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. So how do you guys, obviously, we're all so incredibly thankful for our volunteers, and how do you sort of track the expectations on both sides? Because many of our volunteers, want to volunteer in a specific area. How is that sort of managed, and how is our volunteers are incredible, that really sort of expand our reach through our government services, but just curious as to what that looks like, how we review those expectations on both sides.
Sure, I can take that one. So right now, because our volunteer program had been so diminished after COVID, we're really hiring volunteers in all areas. So at this point, people can choose whichever area they want to start in, and it's entirely up to them. One of the things that we do ask is that once people have gone through their training, they commit to sort of a certain day of the week time shift that they're going to do, because as the number of volunteers we have increases, we're going to lose that availability, because we can't have 15 people all volunteering in the cat room from 12 to 2 p.m. on Saturdays, because that's just too many. So as people join the program, we do ask that they commit to a daytime if they want that guaranteed spot. Otherwise, they face losing that spot and not necessarily being able to volunteer on that day or time. They do all have the option to choose where they want to start their volunteer activity, whether it's with dogs, cats, or small animals. But they're also welcome to be trained in each area. So we generally recommend that people go through training all the way in at least one area before they move to another area. But we've had a number of people who have gone through training in one area and have moved on to other areas. So it's very much up to the volunteer and what they want to commit, how much they want to commit, time-wise and, learning-wise as to what it is they want to do.
That's really helpful. And I guess stepping 1 or 2 steps backward, what's the current just general status? I know that there was an accelerated, particularly during the pandemic, interest in adoption, which is terrific. And has that maintained its level of consistency, or what trends are we seeing generally in the county right now as it relates to our animals?
Well, the adoption side has actually been still operating at pretty much the same level. It depends on the weekend and the timing of things, but weather sometimes, the wintertime, it has an impact on who comes in. We didn't see, from an intake perspective, we didn't see a big surge we had a large number of fosters during COVID-19, and there was a lot of concern that we would get a lot of animals back. Montgomery County has not had that problem. I haven't seen a large number of animals come back in through our intake area because people couldn't foster or didn't want to adopt or, couldn't do it anymore because they had to go back to work. Now that could be for a number of reasons, but I have heard some of the smaller jurisdictions in other parts of Maryland where people did go back to work right away and they had a slight surge in it, but we've not experienced it in Montgomery County. So our intake is pretty much we're on track for where we normally are this time of year. Our down months are January, February, and going into March. But when spring hits and all of that, then things change. Adoption wise, I think it moves in the same direction. The number of people who are available, especially up until while the kids are still in school, it'll stay pretty much the same. We just have a larger number of animals, and when you have a larger number of animals, you generate more interest. Come the summer, when the kids are out of school, we're likely to see a lot more walk-ins. What we're trying to manage now is making this transition from an appointment-only process to a hybrid process where we're doing both appointments, and we're introducing people to walk-ins and being able to get them seen as well. So our adoption supervisor and Lex have been working on plans on how we're going to serve both systems and try to make a hybrid version of them. One thing we like about appointment-based adoptions, about 91% of those people who sign up for an appointment adopt. So that's a pretty high number. Obviously, walk-ins, it's a lot less. So, but we are tracking that, and we're trying to find the best practices to make this hybrid system work for us.
Thank you. And then just final question for now, and I know that in our last conversation, you all were very open to and actively trying to recruit volunteers that spoke second and third languages to help with multicultural outreach and expand your all's ability to reach out to our diverse populations. I assume that still stands. And what are some of the other areas in which you are actively looking for recruiting volunteers where, for whatever reason, and this may not be the case, you may struggle in one area more than other? This is your chance to make a pitch to the public. What would you like to see in terms of volunteers, and which categories of help do you all need support for the most?
I'll give that to Maria. Go ahead.
That's right. I'd say our biggest volunteer need right now is still for our dog program. The dog volunteer program is just more complicated because there's just a lot more to being able to handle dogs in a shelter environment, between each dog's personality, the lack of history, whereas recruiting your cat and small animal volunteers, there's less training that's necessary to get them active. So we're still in need of lots more dog volunteers, although we have seen a really big surge, but we are especially looking for volunteers that are willing to come in the evenings to walk dogs. And that'll help us boost and make sure we're getting all of those dogs out at least 3 times a day, which is really the ideal standard. So that's where we're really, really searching for new volunteers. And we've had quite a few who are starting training to work with the dogs who are available in those times. But we're still looking for more to cover, each of the days throughout the week. And I'd say that's sort of the biggest spot that we're still in need. Our small animals are another spot. We're doing really, really well on the cat side of things, which is great. We've got cat volunteers that come every single morning to help clean the cat room and pretty much have taken that workload off of staff. So we're doing really well in the cats, but I won't turn away more cat volunteers. You're also welcome. But I would say the dogs is still our weakest point when it comes to the number of volunteers we have.
Well, I think Tom Hucker's your guy. He's expressed a lot of interest in helping in that area. But he's got his hands full with pets at home.
Just do my part.
Yeah, on a sidebar, I will follow up with you, Tom and Maria. I had a really interesting meeting recently with the president and CEO of Canine Warriors, who's a friend of mine and happened to be in town. And they're interested in establishing a program in the DMV, which I think could be an interesting partnership. But so I'll follow up with both of you on that. But that's it for now, Mr. Chairman. I yield back to you.
Thank you very much. And it is noted that when Tom was talking about walk-ins and Tom Hucker's cat walked in just at that moment, I thought that was most appropriate. Most appropriate.
We don't want you to have all the cats jokes.
Yeah, and there is a cat's joke that will be coming up shortly. But
It's
anyhow,
inevitable.
yeah, thank you. Thank you for that lead-in.
I know
Susan,
you're here all week.
hopefully, yeah. Susan, I guess Tom said that answers questions 1 and 2, but questions 3 and 4 is sort of tied into those first 2 questions as well. Do we need any additional background on questions 3 and 4?
I was interested in the volunteer training online, and I have a broader question. Just since I've picked this area back up, is there any type of IT need or other technology need that OAS needs in order to facilitate coordination of volunteers or any other of those types of work aspects?
Well, I did talk about the systems that other jurisdictions are using to track. We kind of did a probe into that. We've actually are moving away from one that's very popular among many jurisdictions is Volgistics. And Volgistics is a great way to track the number of volunteers when they come in. We can communicate through it. So it's been a pretty productive program for us. But we're going into a new one, and Maria knows more about it than I do. So I'm going to let her talk about this new program and the flexibility it's going to give us. But that's really the mainstay of our program is getting a system just for volunteers that focuses on the volunteer program. So go ahead, Maria.
Sure. So we're in the process of moving to Digital Cheetah, is what it's called. And it is largely automated on the front end side for that application. So that is going to be a huge time saver when it comes to essentially what I'm doing, because it's going to keep those automated emails down to a minimum and let people go through the progress without having to communicate directly back and forth with me on setting up training. So these volunteers will be able to actually sign up directly on a calendar for their trainings, both their initial training in-house, which their first shift is always an orientation that is done one-on-one as a training, as well as to then sign up for trainings for other areas. So if they're going to be a dog volunteer, they're going to be able to sign up for their training directly on a calendar versus the email that goes to me, and then I loop in our behaviorist who's going to do the training, and then they coordinate, and then I need to know who's going when. It's going to cut out all of that sort of confusion we've got, because it's going to let people just go ahead and select when they're going to come in. The other really, really cool thing about Digital Cheetah that we're going to have is it has something called Group Share, which is essentially, it's almost like its own Facebook group or social media group. It's for the volunteers to network with one another, communicate with one another, share resources. So while we can share resources too, if a volunteer finds something that they found especially helpful, they're able to go ahead and share that with the group. So it's going to let the volunteers interact a lot more with one another, whereas before using just Volgistics, they don't have the ability to communicate with one another directly. So unless they happen to volunteer at the same time each week, they're not going to get to know one another. So Digital Cheetah is really providing a platform to create a community of volunteers that Volgistics just hasn't given us. And that's one of the most important parts of volunteer retention that can really help is when volunteers actually know each other. And so if they've got relationships with other volunteers that also work here, they're more likely to stay because it also becomes a social thing. So Digital Cheetah is going to be really great for that because it's also going to let us engage with those people that don't have Facebook. So while we have a volunteer and foster Facebook group, not everybody has Facebook. A lot of people don't have Facebook. So instead of using that Facebook group, everyone's going to have access to their group share in Digital Cheetah, which allows them to share share pictures, they can post memes on there, all of the same things that would be available in a Facebook group, only everyone can use it because everybody who's a volunteer will have access to it. Digital Cheetah also has an app which makes the sign in and sign out of volunteer hours when we're doing off-site events much easier, because if we're off-site, then they can go ahead and log in from wherever we're at. So when we are out there in the community again, now that some of the COVID stuff is winding down, we'll still be able to track hours for those off-site events.
How do people know, other than the Facebook group, how do people know that you're looking for volunteers? How do you advertise that?
Well, we don't actually have to do a lot of advertising. The number of people interested in volunteering is amazing. So while we have it on our website, when we are out in the community doing events, tabling events, we of course do mention volunteering, and whenever we are, doing news things, we'll talk about volunteering as well. But when it comes down to it, we haven't had to do a lot of promotion because we have new people who express interest in the program literally every single day. So whether or not those people come all the way through and actually do decide to join the program is different with, each person, because sometimes it's not what they were expecting. But we do have people who express interest every single day. And so we have new volunteers that start every week, between 4 to 7, sometimes as many as 10 volunteers in a single week.
Now, that would include our humane education efforts as well, because whenever we go to an HOA or we talk to certain groups, the two things that get mentioned are the opportunities for volunteering and the opportunities to become a foster provider. So we try to incorporate that in every outreach that we do to the community, whatever event we're invited to.
Great. Gabe, did you, Mr. President, did you have your hand up? No, I thought you did. Sorry. Excuse me. So we're turning back to Ms. Farag then, if that's the case. You're on mute.
Speaking about the digital cheetah, does that have any way to track? Actually, your volunteers are more diverse, you indicated, but there was a question in here on the last page of the staff report. How does the Office of Animal Services plan to measure its outreach plan in increasing service access to underserved communities?
Well, that was a tough question for us, mainly because animal service agencies, as traditional, they don't collect demographic information. So like on our volunteer information, we don't track demographics. And in fact, sometimes, it's animals are demographically blind. They don't fall into specific racial profiles or ethnicity or cultural or it's kind of hard to decide whether or not we should be collecting that data. But as we do outreach, and we are talking about this, and we develop an outreach program where we're looking at more culturally diverse areas or areas that we know that are underserved, then we will need to find a way to track that as part of the program. We're not there yet, but we know it's got to be built into that piece so we can track it.
Okay, and the other thing that was listed in the packet was a recommendation from the former council staff member to have a committee session where the Office of Animal Services focuses on trap, neuter, and release policies and best practices. Since we're about to move into budget, I would recommend that we wait until after the budget session, sometime perhaps in early June, to take a look at that.
And I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm assuming that the other two committee members are okay with that. Yes. But I do think we need to have the update, but budgets are going to take a little bit of their time in between. So, but if you could schedule that sometime June, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
And that's all I had.
Anything else from the committee members or Mr. Koenig or?
Yeah, I just had two more things. One, we're very close to securing and hiring a new volunteer coordinator. We're hopefully this person will start in April. Very experienced, very knowledgeable in animal welfare. So we're really kind of excited about getting her on board. And I did want to say one thing about Digital Cheetah. Maria is not a salesperson for them, though she could have sold them. She could have sold that program pretty well. But that was actually all the research and all the information was put together by our volunteers that have been in our program. So when they came through with the recommendations, Digital Cheetah was one of a handful that they gave to us and highly recommended. So they knew it. They were looking at it from both sides of it, which actually benefited us in the long run in getting the right program.
Which is very helpful. And yes, Maria did a wonderful job explaining it. I don't even need it, and I was going to go buy it. So anyhow, anybody else, please? No? Well, thank you all very, very much for being, Tom's good. Thank you all very, very much for being with us this morning. We appreciate all your hard efforts, and we will see each other, if not before, I have a feeling we'll see you during budget, but we will see each other, if not before just budget, and then in June. Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.